The wagon wheels groaned under the desert sun as Natalie Bennett watched her father shake hands with the cattle rancher, sealing a deal that would change her life forever. She was worth exactly 30 head of cattle, and the weight of that number settled into her bones like lead. She sat perched on a wooden crate outside the general store in White Pine, Nevada, her calico dress dusty from the journey into town. The year was 1878, and women had few choices in these harsh lands, but Natalie had never imagined her own father would reduce her to livestock. Her mother had been dead 3 years now, claimed by fever, and without her gentle influence, her father had grown harder, more desperate. The ranch was failing, debts mounting like tumbleweeds against a fence. When Marcus Holloway had approached with his offer, her father had barely hesitated. "It is settled then," her father said, his voice carrying across the dusty street. 30 head of prime cattle for my daughter's hand. She is strong, can cook, clean, so she will make you a fine wife." Natalie's hands clenched in her lap. 20 years old and being sold like a piece of property. She had heard of such arrangements before, marriages of convenience in the territories where women were scarce and men needed help running their homesteads. But she had always believed her father loved her more than that. Apparently, she had been wrong. Marcus Holloway was a thick-set man in his 50s with tobacco-stained teeth and hands that looked like they had never been gentle a day in their life. He owned a spread 20 miles south of White Pine, and rumor had it he had gone through 2 wives already, both dead before their time. Looking at him now, Natalie could believe every dark whisper she had heard. "Bring her here," Holloway said, gesturing impatiently. "Let me see what I am buying." The words struck Natalie like a physical blow, but she rose on trembling legs. Pride kept her spine straight as she walked toward the 2 men. She would not give them the satisfaction of seeing her break. That was when the 3rd man stepped forward. He had been standing in the shadow of the general store's awning, and Natalie had not noticed him before. Tall and lean, probably in his mid-20s, with sun-darkened skin and dark hair that needed cutting. His clothes were trail-worn but clean, and he wore his gun belt with the easy confidence of someone who knew how to use it. But it was his eyes that caught her attention, storm-gray and intense, fixed on her father and Holloway with an expression of barely contained anger. "Hold on just a minute," the stranger said, his voice cutting through the afternoon heat. "Did I hear you right?" "You are trading your daughter for cattle," Natalie's father bristled. "This is none of your concern, stranger. This is family business." "Family business." The young man stepped fully into the sunlight, and Natalie saw the badge pinned to his vest. Not a sheriff's star, but something else. A cattle inspector's badge. "I am Isaac Jennings, and I work for the Nevada Stock Growers Association. I am here investigating reports of cattle theft in the region, but what I just heard sounds a whole lot worse than rustling." Holloway spat into the dirt. "It is a private transaction, Jennings. The girl's father is in debt. I am offering cattle in exchange for a wife. Nothing illegal about that." "Maybe not illegal," Isaac said, his jaw tight, "but it sure is wrong." His eyes moved to Natalie, and something in his gaze made her breath catch. Not pity exactly, but recognition. Like he saw her as a person, not property. "Miss, is this what you want?" The question startled her. No one had asked what she wanted. Not her father, not Holloway, not anyone in this God-forsaken town where survival mattered more than dignity. Her voice came out rough and she cleared her throat. "I want my family's ranch to survive. My father has debts. If this is the only way, it is not the only way," Isaac interrupted. He turned back to her father. "How much do you owe?" $300, her father muttered. "Due by the end of the month, or the bank takes everything." Isaac was quiet for a long moment, his hand resting on his gun belt. Natalie watched emotions flicker across his face: disgust, anger, and something that might have been determination. Finally, he said, "I will give you the $300. Consider it a loan. Your daughter can work it off as my housekeeper with proper wages and her own room. When the debt is paid, she is free to go wherever she chooses." The words hung in the desert air like a miracle. Holloway's face turned purple. "Now wait just a damned minute. We had a deal." "A deal that makes my stomach turn," Isaac said coldly. "The lady is not livestock, and she deserves better than being bartered like a horse." He looked at Natalie again. "What do you say, miss? Would you prefer working as a paid housekeeper or becoming this man's third wife?" Natalie's heart hammered against her ribs. She barely knew this Isaac Jennings, but something in his eyes told her he meant what he said. And anything was better than Marcus Holloway's tobacco-stained smile. "I accept your offer, Mr. Jennings," she said, her voice stronger now. "Thank you." Her father looked torn between relief and shame. The relief won. "If you have got the cash, stranger, then I accept. Natalie, get your things." "No need to thank me," Isaac said to Natalie's father, though his tone suggested he thought the man deserved no gratitude at all. He pulled a leather wallet from his coat and counted out bills. "This covers the debt. I will hold the note, and your daughter will work it off honestly, with wages." Holloway spat again, this time closer to Isaac's boots. "You are making a mistake, Jennings. That girl will run off first chance she gets, and you will be out $300. "That is my risk to take," Isaac said evenly. "And I've got a feeling Miss Bennett here has more honor in her little finger than you have got in your whole body." The compliment, delivered so matter-of-factly, made warmth spread through Natalie's chest. When was the last time someone had spoken of her with respect? 20 minutes later, Natalie sat beside Isaac Jennings on the seat of his wagon, her few possessions loaded in the back. Her father had barely looked at her as she left, shame finally settling over him like a blanket. She did not say goodbye. Some betrayals cut too deep for words. The wagon rolled out of White Pine heading north, toward the high country where Isaac said his ranch lay. The silence between them was not uncomfortable exactly, but it was heavy with unasked questions. Finally, Isaac spoke. "I am sorry you had to go through that." "You have nothing to apologize for," Natalie said. "You saved me from a terrible fate. I am grateful." "You should not have to be grateful for basic human decency," he replied, his hands steady on the reins. "What your father did, what he tried to do, that was wrong. You are not property. You are a person, with your own thoughts and dreams and worth. Worth that has nothing to do with cattle or money or what you can do for some man." The words cracked something open inside Natalie's chest. Tears burned behind her eyes, but she blinked them back. She had cried enough over her father's betrayal. Now was the time to be strong. "Why did you help me?" she asked. "You do not know me. $300 is a fortune." Isaac was quiet for so long she thought he might not answer. Finally, he said, "My mother was sold into marriage when she was 17. To my father, actually. It was arranged by her family back east. They needed money, and my father needed a wife for his new ranch. She never talked about it much, but I saw the sadness in her eyes sometimes. The feeling of being trapped, of having no choice. She grew to care for my father eventually, and they had a good marriage, but she never forgot that her first value to her family was monetary." He glanced at Natalie. "She died 2 years ago. Fever. And when I saw your father bartering you like livestock, I saw my mother's face. I could not walk away." "I am sorry about your mother," Natalie said softly. "She sounds like she was a remarkable woman." "She was," Isaac agreed. "She taught me to see people, really see them. Not what they could do for me or how they could serve my purposes, but who they actually were, their hearts and souls." He cleared his throat as if embarrassed by his own earnestness. Anyway, that is why I stepped in. I could not stand by and watch. They rode in silence for a while longer, the wagon climbing into the foothills where juniper and pine trees dotted the landscape. The heat of the desert valley gave way to cooler mountain air, and Natalie breathed deeply, feeling something loosen in her chest. "Tell me about your ranch," she said eventually. Isaac's expression lightened. "It is not much yet. I inherited it from my father when he passed 5 years ago. 200 acres of decent grazing land, a sturdy house, a barn that needs some repair. I run about 60 head of cattle, do some work for the Stock Growers Association on the side to bring in extra cash. It is a good life, honest work, lonely sometimes but good. Do you have any help, ranch hands? I have a hired man, Tom Fletcher. He is older, probably 60 now, but still strong as an ox. He and his wife live in a small cabin on the property. Maria Fletcher does some cooking and cleaning, but she has been wanting to spend more time with her grandchildren in Carson City. That is actually why I came to White Pine. I was looking to hire someone to help around the house." He gave her a crooked smile. "Though I had planned to do it through proper channels, not by rescuing someone from being traded for cattle." Despite everything, Natalie found herself smiling back. "Well, you certainly found someone who needs the work. I promise you, Mr. Jennings, I will earn every penny of that $300. I am a hard worker, and I know my way around a kitchen and a homestead." "I believe you," Isaac said, "and please call me Isaac. If we are going to be living under the same roof, might as well dispense with the formalities. Then you should call me Natalie." "Natalie," he repeated, as if testing how her name felt. "It suits you." The sun was setting by the time they reached the Jennings ranch. It sprawled across a high valley ringed by mountains, with a creek running through the property. The house was solidly built of pine logs, with a wide porch and stone chimney. The barn stood nearby, and beyond it, Natalie could see cattle grazing in the twilight. Isaac helped her down from the wagon, his hands respectful on her waist, releasing her the moment her feet touched ground. "Come on, I will show you inside. You must be exhausted." The interior of the house was simple but clean. The main room held a stone fireplace, a worn sofa, a handmade table with chairs. The kitchen area was well organized, and Natalie's practiced eye spotted quality cookware and a good iron stove. A hallway led to what Isaac explained were 2 bedrooms. "You will take the spare room," he said, leading her down the hall. "It has got a good bed, a wardrobe, a washstand. The door has a lock on the inside, and I want you to use it. I want you to feel safe here, Natalie. You have my word. I will never enter your room without permission, and I will never," he paused, seeming to search for words, "I will never treat you as anything less than my equal. You work here because we have a financial arrangement, but you are not a servant, and you are certainly not property. You are a woman who deserves respect and kindness. I hope I can provide both." The sincerity in his voice made Natalie's throat tight. "Thank you, Isaac, truly." He nodded, looking almost embarrassed. "Well, I will let you get settled. I am sure you want to wash up and rest. There is fresh water in the pitcher, and I will bring your trunk in from the wagon. Tomorrow, we can discuss your duties and wages properly. For tonight, just rest." After he left, Natalie sat on the edge of the bed and let out a shaking breath. This morning, she had been a commodity, worth 30 head of cattle. Tonight, she was in a stranger's home, but treated with more respect than her own father had shown her in years. She thought about Isaac Jennings as she unpacked her few belongings. He was young for a rancher, probably only 4 or 5 years older than her, but he carried himself with quiet confidence. And those eyes, they saw her as a person. That alone was worth more than gold. Over the next few weeks, Natalie settled into life at the Jennings ranch. She rose early each morning to prepare breakfast for Isaac and Tom Fletcher. She cleaned the house, mended clothes, tended the vegetable garden that grew behind the house, and helped Maria Fletcher with the heavier chores. The work was hard but satisfying, and for the first time in years, Natalie felt like she had purpose beyond being someone's burden. Isaac kept his word about treating her as an equal. He never ordered her around, instead making requests politely. He paid her wages every week, carefully noting the amount against her debt. In the evenings, after supper, they often sat on the porch and talked about his work inspecting cattle, about the challenges of ranching, about books they had read and places they hoped to see someday. Natalie found herself looking forward to those evening conversations more than she wanted to admit. Isaac was smart and thoughtful, with a dry sense of humor that caught her off guard. He listened when she talked, really listened, asking questions and remembering details. And slowly, carefully, they were becoming friends. But it was more than friendship, Natalie realized one evening in early autumn. Isaac had come back from checking the cattle in the north pasture, his shirt torn from catching it on barbed wire. Without thinking, Natalie had insisted on mending it while he wore his spare. As she worked the needle and thread by lamplight, she found herself acutely aware of him sitting across the room, reading a week-old newspaper. The line of his jaw, the way his hair fell across his forehead, the capable strength of his hands as he turned the pages. She was falling in love with him. The realization terrified her. She was here because of a business arrangement, because he had saved her from a terrible fate. The last thing she wanted was to make him uncomfortable by developing feelings he did not return. So she kept her emotions carefully hidden, maintaining the friendly but professional distance that had marked their relationship. Isaac, meanwhile, was fighting his own battle. He had rescued Natalie because it was the right thing to do, because seeing her treated as property had made his blood boil. But somewhere between that first wagon ride and now, his protective instinct had transformed into something deeper. He found himself watching for her smile, listening for her laugh. The house felt warmer with her in it, more like a home than it had since his mother died. But she was in his employ, under his protection, and he would not abuse that position by pressing unwanted attention on her. She had been through enough without him adding to her burdens. So he kept his feelings locked away, content to enjoy her company and pretend his heart did not speed up every time she walked into the room. The first snow came in late October, dusting the mountains white. Isaac and Tom spent long days moving cattle to lower pastures and reinforcing the barn for winter. Natalie worked alongside Maria, preserving vegetables and putting up stores for the cold months ahead. One evening, Isaac came in from the barn to find Natalie sitting at the kitchen table, carefully counting coins. Her face was flushed with excitement. "Is everything all right?" he asked, hanging his coat by the door. She looked up, her eyes bright. "Isaac, I have been calculating. With the wages you have been paying me, and if I am very careful with my spending, I should be able to pay off the debt by next spring, maybe even earlier." The words should have made him happy. Instead, they sent a chill through his chest. "That is wonderful," he managed to say. "You have worked very hard." "I have," she agreed, missing the tension in his voice. "And then I will be free, truly free for the first time in my life. I can decide what I want to do, where I want to go." She paused, her excitement dimming slightly. "Of course, I will be sorry to leave." You have been very kind to me, Isaac. I will not forget it." He nodded, not trusting himself to speak. The thought of Natalie leaving, of the house being empty again, of not seeing her smile every morning, it was unbearable. But what right did he have to ask her to stay? She deserved her freedom, deserved to make her own choices without obligation or debt hanging over her head. Well, We will cross that bridge when we come to it, he said finally. For now, let us just focus on getting through winter. But the conversation haunted him. He found himself memorizing small details about her, the way she hummed while she worked, the precise shade of her brown eyes, the soft sound of her footsteps on the wooden floors. As if he could store up memories against the inevitable loneliness of her departure. Winter deepened, bringing heavy snows that isolated the ranch for days at a time. Tom and Maria Fletcher made it to their cabin and stayed there, leaving Isaac and Natalie alone in the main house. They should have maintained strict propriety, but the long winter evenings and the intimacy of being snowed in together wore away at their careful distance. They played cards by the fire. They read aloud to each other from Isaac's small collection of books. They talked about everything and nothing, sharing stories from their childhoods, their hopes and fears, their views on life and love and the future. One night in January, during a particularly fierce blizzard, the conversation turned personal. "You ever think about marrying?" Natalie asked. They were sitting by the fire, the wind howling outside. It was a bold question, but the storm and the firelight made everything feel slightly unreal, as if normal rules did not apply. Isaac was quiet for a long moment. "I think about it sometimes," he admitted. "I always figured I would marry for love, not convenience. My parents' marriage started as an arrangement, but they grew to love each other. I want to skip the arrangement part and go straight to the love." He glanced at her. "What about you? After everything that happened, do you still believe in marriage?" "I do," Natalie said slowly. "But only if it is a true partnership. I will never again let myself be in a position where I am someone's property, someone's chattel. If I marry, it will be to a man who sees me as his equal, who values my thoughts and feelings as much as his own." She smiled sadly. "That might be asking too much in this world, but I would rather be alone than settle for less." "That is not asking too much," Isaac said fiercely. "Any man would be lucky to have a wife like that, an equal partner, someone to build a life with, not just someone to cook and clean." He stopped himself, aware he was revealing too much. "You deserve that, Natalie. You deserve everything." Their eyes met across the firelight, and the air between them seemed to crackle with unspoken feelings. Natalie's heart hammered in her chest. She wanted to say something, to confess the feelings that had been growing in her heart for months. But fear held her back. What if she was misreading the warmth in his gaze? What if confessing her feelings ruined the friendship they had built? Isaac was fighting the same battle. He wanted to cross the room, to take her hands, to tell her that she had become essential to him, that the thought of her leaving was unbearable. But she had been through so much, had been treated as property by the very person who should have protected her. The last thing he wanted was to make her feel obligated or pressured. So they both stayed silent, and the moment passed. But something had shifted between them that night. Their conversations grew more careful, weighted with things unsaid. They were both acutely aware of each other, of accidental touches when passing in the narrow hallway, of lingering glances across the dinner table. February brought a brief thaw, and with it, visitors. A rider from the Stock Growers Association arrived with a request for Isaac to investigate rustling reports near Virginia City. The job would take him away for at least a week, possibly 2. "I hate to leave you here alone," Isaac said, clearly conflicted. "But Tom and Maria are here if you need anything, and the weather should hold." "I will be fine," Natalie assured him, though her heart sank at the thought of him being gone. "I have plenty to keep me busy, and you said yourself this could be good money." "It is," he admitted, "and we could use it. I have been wanting to buy that section of land to the east, expand the grazing. But still—" "Isaac, go," she said firmly. I am not helpless and I am not your responsibility beyond our business arrangement. I will be here when you get back." He nodded, though his expression remained troubled. "All right, but you lock the doors at night and you keep the rifle loaded, just in case." "I will," she promised. The morning he left, Natalie stood on the porch and watched him ride away, leading a pack horse. He turned once to wave, and she waved back, blinking against tears that had no right to fall. He was her employer, her friend. Nothing more. She had no claim on him, no right to miss him like her heart was being torn in two, but she did miss him. The house felt empty without his presence, too quiet and cold despite the fire she kept burning. She threw herself into work, scrubbing floors that did not need scrubbing, mending clothes that had no tears, anything to keep her mind occupied. On the 5th day, her father arrived. Natalie was hanging laundry when she heard the wagon. She turned, shading her eyes against the winter sun, and felt her heart sink. She recognized that wagon, that hunched figure on the seat. Her father climbed down slowly, moving like an old man though he was barely 50. "Natalie," he said, removing his hat, "I need to talk to you." "You have nothing to say that I want to hear," she replied coldly, reaching for another wet sheet. "Please." The word came out broken. "Just 5 minutes." Against her better judgment, she nodded toward the house. Inside, she poured coffee with shaking hands and sat across from him at the table, the same table where she and Isaac had shared so many meals and conversations. Her father clutched the coffee mug like a lifeline. He looked terrible, thin, haggard, aged beyond his years. "I came to apologize," he said, "and to tell you that you were right to leave. What I tried to do, trading you to Holloway, there is no excuse for it. I was desperate and scared and weak, and I failed you. I failed your mother's memory." Natalie said nothing, her jaw tight. "The ranch is gone," he continued. "Bank took it 2 months ago. I have been living in town doing odd jobs, drinking too much." He looked at her with red-rimmed eyes. "I do not expect you to forgive me. I do not deserve it, but I needed you to know that I am sorry. You deserved better. You deserved a father who protected you, not one who sold you." The words cracked something inside Natalie. She had held her anger close for months, nursed it like a flame. But looking at this broken man across the table, she felt it begin to fade. Anger took energy, and she was tired of carrying it. "I do not forgive you," she said quietly. "Not yet, maybe not ever. What you did," she stopped, swallowing hard. "You made me feel worthless, like I was nothing more than a commodity to be bartered. Do you have any idea what that did to me?" "I know," he whispered, "and I will carry that shame to my grave." They sat in silence for a long moment. Finally, Natalie said, "I am doing well here. Isaac treats me with respect, pays me fair wages. I am paying off the debt, and when it is cleared, I will be free to make my own choices. For the first time in my life, I feel like I have value beyond what I can provide for someone else." Her father nodded slowly. "This Isaac Jennings, he is a good man. The best I have ever known," Natalie said, and meant it. "Then I am glad," her father said. "I am glad you found someone who sees your worth." He stood, placing his hat back on his head. "I will not trouble you again, but I wanted you to know I am sorry for everything." He left, and Natalie sat alone in the quiet house, feeling strangely hollow. She had imagined confronting her father, had planned all the cutting things she would say. But now that it had happened, she felt only sadness. Sadness for what they had lost, for the family they might have been if her mother had lived, for all the ways life had gone wrong. That night, she lay awake thinking about forgiveness and fresh starts, about how Isaac had given her both without asking anything in return, about how somewhere along the way, gratitude had transformed into something deeper and truer. She loved him, fully, completely, with her whole heart. And the knowledge was both wonderful and terrifying. Isaac returned 3 days later, looking exhausted and trail-worn. Natalie heard his horse and came running out of the house without thinking, her heart soaring at the sight of him. "Isaac, thank God you are back safe." He dismounted, his face lighting up at her greeting. "Did you miss me?" he asked, clearly trying to make it a joke. "More than I should have," she admitted, the words escaping before she could stop them. Something flickered in his eyes, hope, maybe, or longing. But before he could respond, Tom Fletcher appeared from the barn, calling out a greeting, and the moment was lost. That evening, over supper, Isaac told her about the investigation. They had caught the rustlers, a gang of 5 men who had been stealing cattle and altering brands. There had been a confrontation, some gunfire, but no one was seriously hurt and the gang was now in custody. "The association paid well," he said. "Enough to make a down payment on that eastern section. Tom and I rode over there yesterday on the way back. The land is perfect good grass, access to water. It would nearly double our grazing capacity." Natalie noticed his use of "our" and felt warmth spread through her chest. "That sounds wonderful." "There is just one problem," Isaac said slowly. He met her eyes across the table. "Expanding means more work, more responsibility. I would need more help, a real partner in running the place." He paused. "Natalie, I have been thinking about something while I was away. Actually, I have been thinking about it for months, and I need to say it, even if it is not what you want to hear." Her heart began to pound. "What is it?" He took a deep breath. "You have almost paid off your debt. Another month or two and you will be free to go wherever you want, do whatever you want, and I will not stop you, but I need you to know I do not want you to go. I want you to stay, not as my housekeeper or my employee, but as my partner. My equal. He stopped, seeming to struggle for words. "When I bought your freedom from your father, I told myself it was about doing the right thing, but somewhere along the way it became about more than that. It became about you, about who you are and how you make me feel. I have fallen in love with you, Natalie, completely and entirely, and I am asking, hoping that maybe you might feel the same." Natalie's breath caught. For a moment, she could not speak, could not move. Then she was standing, moving around the table, and Isaac rose to meet her halfway. "I love you," she said, her voice shaking. "I have loved you for months, but I was afraid to say it, afraid you only saw me as someone to rescue, someone to pity." "Never pity," Isaac said fiercely. He reached for her hands, holding them gently. "I see you, Natalie. Your strength, your kindness, your courage. You are remarkable, and I love you more than I thought it was possible to love anyone." "When you stepped in that day in White Pine," Natalie said, tears streaming down her face now. "When you told my father I was not livestock, that I was your equal, that was the moment my whole life changed. You saw me as a person when everyone else saw me as property. How could I not love you for that?" Isaac reached up, cupping her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing away her tears. "I need you to understand something. If you marry me, and I am asking, truly asking, not because of debt or obligation, but because I want to spend my life with you, it will be as equal partners. You will have a say in every decision we make. Your dreams matter as much as mine. Your voice counts as much as mine. This ranch, this life, it will be ours together, not mine with you as an accessory. You understand?" "I understand," Natalie whispered. "And yes, yes, I will marry you." He kissed her then, soft and sweet and full of promise. Natalie felt something inside her soul click into place, like she had finally found where she belonged. They pulled apart slowly, both smiling like fools. "Should we wait?" Isaac asked. "Give you time to be truly free first, so you know you are choosing this without any debt between us." Natalie shook her head. "I do not need time, I know my heart." But she paused, suddenly uncertain. "I will not take your name if you do not want me to keep mine. Bennett is the name my mother gave me, and after everything with my father, I want to honor her memory. Then keep it, Isaac said immediately. Or hyphenate it, or we both change our names to something entirely new. I do not care about names, Natalie. I care about you. She laughed, the sound bright and free. Bennett Jennings has a nice ring to it. Mrs. Bennett Jennings, Isaac agreed, grinning. Beautiful. They were married 3 weeks later in the small church in White Pine. Tom and Maria Fletcher stood as witnesses, along with a handful of friends from neighboring ranches. Natalie wore a simple white dress that Maria had helped her sew, and Isaac wore his best suit, his hair finely trimmed and his face freshly shaven. The ceremony was brief, the words traditional. But when Isaac said his vows, he added something. I promise to love you and honor you, to see you always as my equal and partner, to value your voice and your dreams as much as my own. You are not livestock, not property, not a possession. You are my wife, my love, my other half, and I am honored beyond measure that you have chosen me. Natalie's vows were equally heartfelt. I promise to love you and support you, to be your partner in all things, to build a life with you based on respect and trust and genuine affection. You saved me from a terrible fate, but more than that, you taught me to value myself. You gave me freedom and dignity when I had neither. I love you, Isaac Jennings, and I choose you freely, with my whole heart. There was not a dry eye in the church. The reception was held at the ranch, with tables set up in the yard and lanterns strung between the trees. Neighbors brought food and music, and they danced under the stars. Isaac held Natalie close, swaying to a fiddle tune, both of them grinning like idiots. Happy, he murmured into her hair. Happier than I have ever been, she replied. I love you. I love you too, my wife, my equal, my partner. Their wedding night was gentle and sweet, both of them nervous but eager. Isaac was patient, making sure Natalie felt safe and cherished. He had waited so long to hold her like this, to express his love physically, and he wanted it to be perfect for her. Afterward, they lay tangled together in bed, Natalie's head on Isaac's chest, listening to his heartbeat. I have been thinking, she said drowsily, about the ranch expansion. I have some ideas. Isaac smiled in the darkness. Tell me, what if we diversified? Cattle are good, but what about horses? We could breed and train them, sell to the army or settlers. And I have always wanted to try keeping bees for honey. We could sell that in town, maybe even in Virginia City. Those are good ideas, Isaac said, genuinely impressed. See, this is what I meant about partners. Your mind works differently than mine, and we are stronger together. They talked late into the night, making plans, dreaming about the future. And Natalie realized that this comfortable intimacy, this equal partnership, this love that asked for nothing but gave everything, this was what marriage should be. Spring came, bringing new life to the ranch. The cattle calved successfully, and Isaac purchased the eastern section, expanding their operation. True to her word, Natalie paid off the remainder of her debt from her wages, insisting on it even though Isaac protested that as his wife, it no longer mattered. It matters to me, she said firmly. I want to know I fulfilled my obligation honestly. He understood and did not argue further. They bought 6 mares and a stallion, starting their horse breeding program. Natalie proved to have a gift with horses, able to calm even the most skittish animals. By summer, they had 2 colts and were training 3 young horses for sale. True to her other plan, Natalie also started keeping bees. Isaac built her hives under her direction, and by late summer, they harvested their first honey. It sold quickly in White Pine, and soon they had orders from as far as Virginia City. The ranch prospered. More importantly, their marriage prospered. They worked side by side, making decisions together, respecting each other's expertise. When they disagreed, which happened, because they were both strong-willed, they talked it through until they found compromise. Their love deepened, growing from that first passionate bloom into something richer and more enduring. In the autumn of 1879, Natalie discovered she was pregnant. She told Isaac one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sun set over the mountains. "I have news," she said, taking his hand. He looked at her, concern flickering across his face. "What is it? Are you all right?" "I am wonderful," she assured him. "Isaac, we are going to have a baby." His face went through a rapid series of expressions: shock, joy, wonder, fear. "A baby? Really? Are you certain?" "I am certain," she said, laughing at his expression. "How do you feel about becoming a father?" "Terrified," he admitted, "and thrilled, and honored. A baby." He pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Our baby. God, Natalie, I love you so much." "I love you too," she whispered. "And I know you will be an amazing father, just like you are an amazing husband." They spent the rest of the evening talking about nurseries and names, and all the ways their life was about to change. Isaac was almost giddy with excitement, already planning additions to the house and improvements to make everything safer for a child. The pregnancy progressed smoothly. Natalie continued working, though Isaac fussed over her constantly, trying to keep her from overdoing it. She tolerated his concern with good humor, understanding it came from love. In March of 1880, their son was born during a late-season snowstorm. The birth was long and difficult, and there were moments when Isaac feared he would lose both of them. But Natalie was strong, and with Maria's help, she brought their child into the world as dawn broke over the mountains. Isaac held his son for the first time with shaking hands, marveling at the tiny perfect features, the small fists waving in the air. "He is beautiful," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Natalie, he is perfect." "What should we name him?" Natalie asked, exhausted but glowing. They had discussed names for months but never settled on one. Now, looking at his son, Isaac thought of his own father, the man who had taught him about ranching and hard work and integrity. "What about James?" "After my father, James Jennings," Natalie said, testing it. "I like it." "But his middle name should be after your mother, James Eleanor Jennings." Isaac's eyes filled with tears. "That is perfect. Thank you." Little James was a healthy, happy baby who quickly became the center of their world. Isaac proved to be a devoted father, walking the floor with a crying infant in the middle of the night, changing diapers without complaint, singing off key lullabies that made Natalie laugh. They adjusted to parenthood together, supporting each other through the sleepless nights and overwhelming love that came with a child. The ranch continued to thrive, though they hired additional help so Natalie could focus more on the baby. 2 years later, their daughter was born. They named her Eleanor Natalie Jennings, honoring both their mothers. She had Isaac's gray eyes and Natalie's stubborn chin, and from the moment she entered the world, she made her presence known with lusty cries. "She has got your fire," Isaac said admiringly, watching his daughter nurse. "And your determination," Natalie replied. "Heaven help us when she gets older." Life settled into a comfortable rhythm. The children grew, the ranch expanded, and their love deepened with each passing year. Isaac made good on his promise to treat Natalie as his equal. They made all major decisions together, and he frequently sought her advice on everything from cattle sales to hiring decisions. In 1883, they faced their first major crisis as a married couple. A drought struck the region, threatening their cattle and horses. Water became precious and grazing land turned brown and sparse. Many ranchers went under, losing everything. But Isaac and Natalie worked together, making difficult decisions about which cattle to sell, how to conserve water, where to find supplemental feed. They went into debt to keep the operation running, betting everything on their ability to survive until the rains returned. It was a gamble that paid off. The drought broke in the spring of 1884, and their reduced but healthy herd thrived. Within 2 years, they had recovered their losses and then some. "We did it," Isaac said one evening, reviewing their accounts. "We actually came out ahead." "We made a good team," Natalie agreed, leaning against his shoulder, "just like always." In 1886, Natalie's father died. A neighbor from White Pine brought the news. He had been living in a boarding house, working odd jobs, drinking heavily. One morning, he simply did not wake up. Natalie surprised herself by grieving. Despite everything, he had been her father. She attended his funeral with Isaac by her side, said her goodbyes, and let go of the last remnants of anger she had carried. "Do you regret anything?" Isaac asked later, holding her while she cried. "I regret that we never reconciled fully," she admitted, "but I do not regret the choices I made. If things had gone differently, I would not have you, would not have our children, would not have this life. And I would not trade this for anything." As the years passed, their family continued to grow. A third child arrived in 1888, another son they named Thomas, after Tom Fletcher, who had been such a loyal friend and worker. Tom had passed away the previous year, and naming their son after him felt right. Their children grew up on the ranch, learning to ride before they could walk, understanding the value of hard work and the importance of treating others with respect. Isaac and Natalie raised them with the same values that had brought them together: equality, dignity, and love. James proved to have his father's head for business and his mother's way with horses. Alina was fierce and independent, already declaring at age 8 that she would run the ranch someday. Thomas was the gentle one, more interested in books than cattle, and his parents encouraged his scholarly interests. The ranch continued to prosper. By 1890, the Jennings spread was one of the largest and most successful in the region. They ran several hundred head of cattle, bred horses that were sought after throughout Nevada, and Natalie's honey business had expanded to include candles and beeswax products sold throughout the territory. They built a larger house to accommodate their growing family, though they kept the original cabin for sentimental reasons. The new house had modern conveniences, glass windows in every room, a hand pump in the kitchen, even wallpaper in the parlor. But it was still a ranch house at heart, practical and sturdy, designed for a working family. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Isaac took Natalie on a rare trip away from the ranch. They traveled to San Francisco, leaving the children with Maria Fletcher and her daughter. It was Natalie's first time seeing the ocean, and she stood on the beach with tears streaming down her face, overwhelmed by the vastness of it. "Thank you," she said to Isaac, who stood beside her holding her hand, "for everything, for saving me, for loving me, for building this life with me." "You saved me too," Isaac replied. "I was lonely before you came into my life, going through the motions, working the ranch, but not really living. You brought color and joy and purpose. You gave me a family, a partnership, a reason to get up every morning beyond just survival. I should be thanking you." They stood in silence, watching the waves crash against the shore. 10 years since that day in White Pine when Isaac had stepped forward and declared her not livestock, but his equal. 10 years of hard work and love and building a life together. 10 years that had transformed both of them from lonely, hurting individuals into partners, parents, and best friends. "I love you," Natalie said. "I will love you forever." "And I love you," Isaac replied. "My wife, my equal, my everything." The years continued to roll by. The children grew into young adults, each finding their own path. James married a schoolteacher from Carson City and brought her home to the ranch, already taking over more of the day-to-day operations. Alina shocked no one by declaring she would attend the new women's college in California, determined to bring modern ranching techniques back to Nevada. Thomas won a scholarship to study literature in the East. Isaac and Natalie watched their children spread their wings with pride and only a little sadness. They had raised them to be independent thinkers, after all, to make their own choices and follow their own dreams. In 1895, 17 years after they had met, Isaac and Natalie sat on the porch of their home watching the sunset. Their hair showed touches of gray now, their faces bore the lines of time and weather, but their love was as strong as ever. "You remember that first day?" Natalie asked. "When you told my father I was not livestock." "I remember everything about that day," Isaac said. "The look on your face, the way you held your head high even though you were being treated like property. I knew right then that you were someone special." "I thought you were crazy," Natalie admitted with a laugh. "Some stranger throwing around money to save a woman he did not even know. I could not figure out your angle." "No angle," Isaac said. "Just a man who could not stand by and watch an injustice, and the best decision I ever made." "The best decision we both made," Natalie corrected. She took his hand, their fingers intertwining with the ease of long familiarity. "I chose you freely that day, Isaac, not because I had no other choice, but because I saw in your eyes something I had never seen before: genuine respect. You saw me as a person, and that changed everything." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sky turn orange and pink and purple. The ranch spread out before them, the fruit of their joint labor and love. Cattle grazed in the distance, horses ran in the pastures, and somewhere in the house behind them, they could hear James and his wife discussing plans for the next season. "We built something good here," Isaac said finally. "Not just a successful ranch, but a real home. A place where our children learned that respect and equality are not just words but ways of living." "We did," Natalie agreed. "Together, as equals, just like you promised." As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, they remained on the porch, two people who had found each other against all odds, who had built a life of love and partnership in the harsh but beautiful landscape of Nevada. They had faced droughts and difficulties, had raised children and built a legacy, had proven that marriage could be a true partnership between equals. And every day, in small ways and large, Isaac continued to live up to the promise he had made that first day in White Pine. Natalie was not livestock. She was his equal, his partner, his love. And that made all the difference. The ranch that had once been Isaac's alone was now truly theirs, built on mutual respect and genuine love. Their children carried those values forward, teaching their own children that worth is not measured in cattle or coins, but in character and courage. The story of how their parents met, how Isaac had stepped forward and declared Natalie's value when no one else would, became family legend, told and retold to grandchildren and great-grandchildren. As they grew older, Isaac and Natalie remained active in the ranch operations, though they gradually handed over more responsibility to James and his wife. They took time to travel, to read, to simply enjoy each other's company. They had worked hard all their lives, and now they allowed themselves to rest a little, to appreciate what they had built. On their 25th wedding anniversary, their children threw them a celebration. Friends and neighbors came from all over the region to honor the couple who had become pillars of the community. James gave a speech, talking about how his parents had shown him what marriage should be: a partnership of equals, built on respect and love. Eleanor, home from California with her own husband and infant son, added her own tribute. "My mother taught me that a woman's value is not determined by men, but by herself. My father taught me that real men do not need to diminish women to feel strong. Together, they showed me what it means to build a life as equals." I am who I am because of their example. Even Thomas, usually shy about public speaking, stood to say a few words. In all the literature I have studied, in all the great love stories and epic romances, I have never encountered anything more powerful than what my parents have. It is not a story of grand gestures or tragic sacrifices, but of daily choice. Every day, they choose each other. Every day, they treat each other with respect and kindness. That is the real romance. Natalie cried through all the speeches, and Isaac kept his arm around her, his own eyes suspiciously wet. Looking at their children, at the community they had built, at the life they had created together, he felt overwhelming gratitude. Later, when the party had wound down and they were alone in their bedroom, Natalie turned to Isaac with a smile. 25 years. Can you believe it? Best 25 years of my life, he replied, pulling her close. And I am looking forward to 25 more. At least, Natalie agreed. She rested her head on his shoulder, breathing in the familiar scent of him, leather and soap and home. I love you, Isaac Jennings. Thank you for seeing me when no one else did. Thank you for treating me as your equal when the whole world said women were less. Thank you for loving me. Thank you for choosing me, Isaac replied, kissing her forehead. For trusting me, for building this life with me, for being my partner in all things. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Natalie. The very best. They made love that night with the tenderness of long familiarity and the passion of enduring love. Age had touched them both, but it had not diminished what they felt for each other. If anything, their love had deepened with time, roots growing stronger through seasons of joy and sorrow, success and struggle. The years continued their steady march. Isaac and Natalie became grandparents several times over, delighting in the next generation. They watched Alina become a pioneering rancher in California, implementing innovative techniques that transformed her spread into one of the most productive in the state. They saw Thomas publish his first book of poetry, with a dedication that read, "For my parents, who showed me that the greatest love stories are the ones lived daily with grace and equality." James took over the Nevada ranch completely, running it with the same values his parents had instilled. He and his wife raised their children on the same principles, and the Jennings name became synonymous with fair dealing and integrity throughout the region. As they entered their 60s, Isaac and Natalie slowed down physically, but their minds remained sharp and their love remained strong. They spent their days doing lighter tasks around the ranch, playing with grandchildren, and enjoying the peace they had earned through decades of hard work. One evening in early spring of 1903, 25 years to the day since Isaac had first seen Natalie in White Pine, they sat on their porch watching another sunset. It had become their ritual, this evening time together, marking the end of each day with quiet companionship. "Do you know what I was thinking about today?" Natalie asked. "That moment when you told my father I was not livestock but your equal. Do you remember exactly what you said?" "I said you were not livestock and that you deserved better than being bartered like a horse," Isaac recalled. "And I meant every word. You were never property, Natalie. You were always so much more." "You changed my life that day," she said softly. "You gave me back my humanity, my dignity, and then you gave me love. Real love, the kind that lifts up instead of weighing down. The kind that makes you more yourself, not less." "We gave each other that," Isaac corrected gently. "You taught me just as much as I taught you. You showed me what it means to be truly strong, to survive terrible things and come out with your kindness intact. You made me a better man, Natalie. A better person." They sat in silence, hands clasped, watching the familiar landscape they had shaped together. The ranch would outlast them, would pass to their children and grandchildren, a legacy of hard work and love. But more than property or prosperity, they had built something intangible but invaluable. They had proven that marriage could be a true partnership, that love could exist between equals, that respect and affection could build something that endured. "I would choose you again," Natalie said suddenly. "If I could go back to that day in White Pine, knowing everything that would come, the hard work, the struggles, the drought years and difficult times, I would still choose you. Every single time. And I would choose you," Isaac replied. "Every single time. You are my greatest adventure, Natalie. My greatest love, my greatest success. Not the ranch, not the cattle, not any of it. You, us, what we built together." As the sun sank below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, they remained on the porch, two people who had found each other against all odds and built a love that would echo through generations. Their story became family legend, told to children and grandchildren as an example of what love should be. Not the transaction that almost was, not the cattle trade that could have destroyed a life, but the moment one person looked at another and saw not property but potential, not livestock but a human being deserving of respect and dignity. Isaac and Natalie lived many more years together, growing old side by side, their love deepening with each passing season. When Isaac finally passed at the age of 78, Natalie held his hand and whispered the same words she had said on their wedding night. "You saved me. You loved me. You saw me as your equal, and I love you for it, now and always." She lived 3 more years after Isaac, spending her time with children and grandchildren, passing on the values she and Isaac had lived by. When she died peacefully in her sleep at 81, her last thoughts were of that first evening on the ranch, when Isaac had promised to treat her as his equal, and had kept that promise every single day of their marriage. Their children buried them side by side on a hill overlooking the ranch with a simple headstone that read, "Isaac Jennings and Natalie Bennett Jennings, partners, equals, beloved." The ranch continued through the generations, and so did the story of how it all began with a man who saw injustice and refused to accept it, and a woman who had the courage to choose freedom and love. With 30 head of cattle that were never traded and words that changed a life. "You are not livestock. You are my equal." It was a story of the Wild West, yes, with all its hardship and rough justice. But more than that, it was a story of love, real, enduring, transformative love that recognized the fundamental worth and equality of another human being. It was a story that proved that even in the harshest landscape, in the most difficult times, respect and partnership could flourish. That love between equals was not just possible, but powerful. And in the hearts and lives of all who came after them, Isaac and Natalie's legacy lived on not just in property or prosperity, but in the values they had lived and the love they had shared. A love that had started with a stranger's intervention in White Pine, Nevada in 1878, and had grown into something that would echo through time, a testament to the power of seeing another person's worth and choosing to honor it every single day. Their grandchildren and great-grandchildren carried those values forward into the new century, into new challenges and opportunities. The women in the family grew up knowing they were equals, not property. The men grew up understanding that real strength lay in lifting others up, not keeping them down. And all of them knew the story of how their family began with courage, with conviction, and with a love built on the revolutionary idea that partnership between equals was not just possible, but essential. As the 20th century dawned and the Wild West faded into history, the story of Isaac and Natalie Jennings remained a reminder that some things are timeless. Respect, dignity, equality, love. These were not relics of a bygone era, but foundations for any time, any place, any relationship worth having. And somewhere in the mountains of Nevada, on a ranch built by two people who refused to accept that one human being could ever be worth exactly 30 head of cattle, the wind whispered through the pines, carrying their story forward into tomorrow.